Hi guys, it's Kat. Welcome back to another video on my channel. So first I want to start off by saying thank you so much for everyone who watched my last two videos. I was not expecting that much support on my first few posts, so it really meant a lot. I kind of wanted to finally open up a little bit about my admissions and application process last year. And so yeah, I heard that Common App opened up a few days ago, and I did get a few texts from some underclassmen asking me to talk a little bit about what the process was like for me. So yeah, I was really hesitant to share my stats and ECs just because I did religiously watch these videos when I applied, but honestly, having gone through the application process myself, it's really holistic, more than I considered it to be. When you're competing for a spot at these top tier schools, you're already competing within those same range of standardized test scores and AP scores, and so knowing my SAT score or my transcript isn't really gonna help. I did want to talk about my essays though, because I feel like that was like the selling point of my application, and especially in light of the recent affirmative action rulings, I did want to talk about that because I know the prompts are changing a little bit. So I have my computer with me right here. I have 5 tips that I want to share with you guys that I thought really carried me throughout my entire essay crafting process and will hopefully help you guys as well. This is kind of like blanket statements that aren't too specific to a certain prompt, but hopefully it will serve as a guideline for anyone who is going through a writer's block. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If it did help, make sure to thumbs it up, subscribe down below, and let me know what else you guys want to see. And yeah, so my first tip is you're writing for admissions officers and not your high school teachers. I think when you're writing essays in general, it's really important to know who your audience is and who you're speaking to, whose heart you're trying to touch, who you're trying to get your message across to, what you're trying to sell here is. This was probably the best advice I've received throughout my entire essay crafting process, is that in high school you're taught the traditional introduction paragraph, your 3 bodies, and then your conclusion. This method that teachers teach you is specifically for the purpose of just organizational and coherent purposes. But if there's anything that I learned from writing probably over 100 drafts of my personal statement, as well as countless drafts of all my supplemental essays, is that you can't write your life story in a chronological manner, strict format that you're taught with. Honestly, it doesn't make sense for each point in your life or event in your life just perfectly ties in with the next. And so that's the same with when you're trying to relay it in your essays. You have to figure out how to maximize your word count and make use of each word that you are given to use. You have to learn how to effectively tell your life story within that short word count limit that you're given. Depending on whether you're using Common App, QuestBridge Coalition, or any of those platforms, you're honestly given around like 500 to 800 words to tell your life story. And so you have to figure out how you can show not only one, your upbringing and the challenges that you've overcome to get to this point, 2, what your career goals are, and kind of tie it in with where you are in the present and what you're looking to do at the institution that you're applying to. I would just throw away everything you know about the traditional 5-paragraph format and start looking through all the creative ways you can tell your story. I would consider a list, a letter, chapter. I know people that did like a recipe list, kind of, that was super creative. I know people that are using it to show like different scenes from a movie. I personally did a letter format to someone in my life. It was sort of like a narrative where I retold all the highlights of not only my high school career but also hardships throughout my upbringing. Second tip or advice that I have is you are the author of your own novel. With that, follow that structure. If you're considering the traditional flow of a fiction story, you have exposition, rising action, falling action, climax, and resolution. If not all 5, I would at least emphasize exposition, climax, and resolution. The same way your life isn't a linear journey, don't relay the narrative as if it is. You want to ask yourself these guideline questions. What's the inspiration behind your career choice? What pushed you to involve yourself in the work you did in high school? These are the questions that you want to keep in mind while you're answering what you have to offer to these schools. And later on in the supplements, you'll have an opportunity to explain what the institution has to offer you. Someone that served like a mentor throughout my essay crafting process told me that you're also shopping for a school. Yes, you are trying to sell yourself to these schools and present what you have to offer, but in the same way, it's important to consider what these institutions have to offer you, what resources, what opportunities opportunities and how they are going to help you. So definitely be confident in the process. But yeah, also you guys have probably heard of the running joke that students like admitted to top tier schools write about the most random things they get in. Like on TikTok, I watched the I hate the letter S essay, also one about like pasta. Truth be told, you seriously can write about something that's trivial and then tie it in with how that was a defining moment for you and that actually played a much larger role in your academic career and pursuits. And I actually encourage you to do that because you don't need to have conducted Nobel Prize worthy research to be admitted to do work in medicine. Like maybe it was inspired by something as simple as watching Doc McStuffins or a TV show when you were younger that inspired you. Focus on telling the narrative with not just a boring story with no catch to it. Make sure that there's a selling point in your essay, a turning point as to how this seemingly little moment turned into something much larger of you wanting to pursue a specific field of study. Okay, so third one is, I did briefly mention this earlier, but the school wants you to, not just the other way around, and also the cliche show not tell. But I think this is so important to keep in mind. I've edited so many essays for other people. And honestly, these students can be as smart as possible. They can have all the scores, all the extracurriculars, but if you're literally just doing a whole bunch of telling and you're not showing, it's not an effective essay. First, when you're planning out your essays, I would break it down into two categories. The first being character traits and the second being your academic pursuits and interests. What are the character traits you want the admissions officers to know about you? Start by answering something as simple as, how would you describe yourself in 3 words? And then after you've listed all your personal character traits that you think you have, aim to tell your story in a way that shows all 3 of those traits. So for example, if you chose that you're passionate, well-rounded, and outgoing. One, if you're trying to show that you're passionate, you might want to showcase different projects you were involved in that show that you genuinely love what you do. If you want to show that you're well-rounded, you might want to communicate your diversifying projects and that you're not just limited or confined to one field of study. If you want to show that you're outgoing, you might want to express your love for public speaking, your love for being around other people, and how that has played an influence in your life. And as for academic interests, you will have many other opportunities to mention them, but I would briefly mention them in your essays because in the end, you're trying to connect your personal story as to what kind of work you're looking to do and bring to the institution. And also, if you're interested in the intersections of 2 different fields, I would definitely mention that as well. For example, if you're interested in politics and economics, you might want to show that working at a firm inspired you to look at policy making for healthcare, learning about lobbyists in your AP Gov class. My 4th point, which I think is so important, this is also a common mistake I've seen in a lot of essays, is that your essays are not your LinkedIn or resume. And what I mean by this is I see a lot of students just listing their accomplishments in their essays for the sole purpose of showing that they're successful in the work that they do, or writing their supplemental essays with the same things that AOs can already see on your extracurriculars or honor section. Of course, it's important to show these officers that you have a niche, but it's also just as important to show that you're able to present yourself as an entire package. Your characters, your hobbies, you're trying to showcase yourself as a well-rounded candidate. This is why you see half the time students with like 1550 plus SAT scores, 34 plus, are getting rejected from these top schools. They don't want students that just know how to navigate textbooks or test-taking strategies. They want students with character and genuine passion for the work that they do, and shows that they have what it takes to create tangible change in the real world. So please get creative in this section. For example, one of the supplements for my Princeton application was to elaborate on an activity, experience, or meaningful hobby. I could have talked about my debate experience or my internship to show that I have experience in the intersection of politics and working with constituents. That's already listed elsewhere in my EC section. So I wanted to take this opportunity to play on the hobby aspect of the prompt. I talked about climbing not just as a random topic, to show my previous struggle with having a perfectionist complex and how climbing has taught me to embrace failure, all the while learning a new sport and showcasing that I can appreciate life just outside of pure academics. My love for a technical sport that has taught me a lot about community, critical thinking skills. And my last piece of advice is why the why us is your most important essay. This is up for debate, but honestly, this is probably what helped me because Princeton was my dream school. I did know I wanted to go to Princeton ever since freshman year, and conducting a lot of research on the background of the school and the opportunities they offer easily to me, but I think a lot of applicants forget. You can have the test scores, the extracurriculars, and even a stellar personal statement. If you half-ass this essay, it's just gonna put you at a disadvantage, and let me explain why. Okay, these schools are looking for students that are going to take advantage of the unique resources that these schools offer. They're not going to consider you a priority candidate if you don't consider them as a priority school. Don't just apply to these schools because of the name, that they're a T20, T10. And I know this is easier said than done. Please seriously look into why you want to attend these schools. Look into what resources that they can assist you with in your studies and how you'll utilize them to initiate successful projects that will uplift the institution's name in 5-10 years. For example, I talked a lot about how an interdisciplinary curriculum in the social sciences was important to me and why Princeton met that standard in terms of politics and SPIA. I also mentioned specific professors I wanted to work with and why their work inspired me, and then projects I also wanted to initiate at the institution, either from scratch or an extension of projects that already exist. So things I mentioned were a symposium of guest speakers to talk about consequences of partisanship in government, and I also talked about how I wanted to investigate the influence of interest groups in the Supreme Court. And then I also furthered that by talking about which resources specifically would assist me in carrying out that project. So things like that will only be expressed if you have done sufficient research, and AOs will know that they read thousands of applications every day, and they honestly will only spend around like 1 to 3 minutes on your application. So it's important that you have something in there that shows that you're genuinely interested at this specific institution. Okay, so those are all my tips and advice that I have on my computer. I hope that is of help for anyone that's currently navigating the essay crafting process. I spent months just working on my personal statement. It definitely is not a linear process. One day you might just wake up and realize you have a better idea for what you want to write about. It's definitely a grueling process, but something I would embrace, and it's slow. You have more time than you think you do. If you guys have any questions, feel free to either comment your questions or reach out to me on Instagram. I would love to help anyone that is looking to have someone peer edit or just have any questions about the process in general. I'd love to answer them. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe down below, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.